2 weeks ago, a newlywed couple's dream honeymoon turned into a nightmare. Just days after their wedding in Queenstown, the bride disappeared without a trace, leaving her husband frantic and authorities claiming she left voluntarily. But when he noticed a photo from the wedding, he realized something no one else had. A chilling clue pointing directly to her obsessive ex-husband. What really happened that night? And how far would one man go to save the love of his life? Before we dive into this gripping story of obsession, danger, and relentless love, let us know where you're watching from today. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy stories that keep your heart racing. Under the buzz of harsh fluorescent lights in a small windowless room at the Queenstown police station, a man named Ethan Mercer sits hunched in an uncomfortable metal chair, his bloodshot eyes bored into the blank wall opposite him. This was his third interview in the past 24 hours. Across from him sits Detective Inspector Grant Wilson, flanked by 2 officers of the South Island Police Force, their faces weary but determined. "Mr. Mercer," Detective Wilson begins, his voice calm yet carrying the weight of urgency. "We've been through this more than once now, but we need to go over your timeline again. Every single detail could be vital." Ethan nods, pressing his palms against his face as he exhales a long, defeated breath. Ethan clears his throat and begins. It was around 6:30 that morning at the luxury honeymoon retreat they'd chosen near Lake Wakatipu, a breathtaking glacial lake in New Zealand's South Island. His new wife, Celeste, had plans for a sunrise yoga session by the lake at 6:45. She kissed him on the forehead while he drifted between sleep and wakefulness. The memory, the warmth of her lips, the softness of her farewell, pierced through his heart like cold steel. He watched her walk off, energized by the day ahead. When asked what they had planned afterward, Ethan answered that they were booked for a scenic flight across Lake Wakatipu at 10 o'clock, followed by cliff diving in the afternoon. A bold adventure they'd chosen to celebrate their new life together. Celeste had been especially excited about it. Adventure sports were her thing. After the yoga, she was to head back to the resort spa for a massage and facial at 8, then return by 9:30 for breakfast. But as the morning crept on, something felt wrong. Detective Wilson leaned in, flipping through a small black notebook. "And at what point did you realize something was amiss?" he asked. Ethan's voice cracked. "Around 10, when she still hadn't returned. I waited another hour, thinking the spa appointment might be running late. By 11, I called her and realized her phone was still in our room." Panic began swelling in his chest. Celeste never went anywhere without her phone. He descended to the front desk of the resort. The spa had no record of her showing up. Staff had searched restaurants, gardens, beach, gym, everywhere. But by 1 o'clock, she was gone. That's when he came here to report her missing. Detective Wilson nodded slowly, scanning his notes. "Mr. Mercer, we've made progress today. Hotel staff and guests have been questioned, and we've reviewed the resort's CCTV footage." Ethan sat up, hope and dread mingling. "Yes?" he urged. Officer Janine Kelly took over. "We confirm your wife logged into the yoga session at 6:45 by witnesses and cameras. Then between 7:50 and 8:15, the footage shows her walking toward the spa, but the spa says she never arrived." Ethan felt himself tilt backward, everything pointing to her departure, yet she never made it to a confirmed destination. Kelly continued. "The footage shows a man in a staff uniform approach her before she reached the spa. They spoke, then left together. This individual does not match any roster staff, and no one at management recognizes him." Ethan's heart pounded. "Have you found where he took her?" he exploded, slamming his palm on the table. The third officer responded, voice low and grave. "We traced the pair exiting the hotel onto the street. No signs of struggle, no distress. The trail goes cold outside the resort." A heavy silence settled, thick with fear, pain, and unresolved questions. No one, neither staff nor guests, had heard a single cry for help or noticed anything unusual that morning. Ethan's voice trembled with disbelief as he snapped, "So you're saying my wife just walked off with a complete stranger?" Detective Wilson shifted in his seat, clearing his throat before replying. "We're not jumping to conclusions, Mr. Mercer, but there's something you should hear." He opened his notebook and glanced down. "We spoke with the yoga instructor, a man named Rohan Patel. He mentioned your wife said something unusual during the session." Ethan leaned forward, his stomach tightening. "What kind of comment?" The detective's tone was measured. "Mr. Patel said she told him she'd be free of everything soon. He thought she meant spiritually, like feeling free after yoga, but given the circumstances..." Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "No, that's impossible. Celeste wouldn't say that. We just got married 2 weeks ago. This is our honeymoon, for God's sake." His voice cracked, echoing off the cold, bare walls of the room. Detective Wilson raised a calming hand. "Mr. Mercer, please. We're not implying anything. We're gathering every piece of information we can." Ethan rubbed his temples, trying to steady himself. "What about that man? The one in the uniform? Where did they go? Did the cameras follow them?" Officer Janine Kelly answered quietly. "Not to the parking lot. They walked out onto Shotover Street. We checked local cameras and asked nearby businesses for footage. We tracked them for about 2 blocks before they disappeared." Ethan's chest tightened. "And you still haven't found her?" Wilson shook his head. "Queenstown's quiet this time of year, but we've been asking shop owners, restaurant staff, delivery drivers. No one recalls seeing them. We've already expanded our search radius, but so far, no significant leads." Ethan's desperation spilled out. "So, what now?" Wilson leaned forward. "We've called in more resources from the regional police. Starting tomorrow, we'll widen our perimeter around Queenstown and alert Border Control and Coastal Patrol units across the South Island. Immigration and ferry crossings on the North Island are on notice too. If anyone tries to move her off the island, we'll know." Ethan nodded slowly, numb. 5 days into what was supposed to be their dream honeymoon, his wife had vanished into thin air. None of it made sense. "Is there anything else you can think of?" Wilson asked gently. "Anything odd about her behavior before she disappeared?" Ethan shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. "No, she was happy. We were happy." He rubbed his face, exhaustion weighing down every breath. "This was supposed to be the happiest time of our lives." Detective Wilson finally closed his notebook with a quiet snap. "We'll keep pushing first thing tomorrow. Try to get some rest, Mr. Mercer. We'll drive you back to your hotel." Outside, the crisp night air bit at Ethan's skin as the officers escorted him toward the car. He looked out across the starlit expanse of Lake Wakatipu, its silver waters rippling under the moonlight. Somewhere out there, in the vast wilderness that surrounded this tranquil town, his wife was missing. Perhaps frightened, perhaps in danger, and the thought hollowed him out. "Please," he murmured, his voice breaking as the car door opened. "Just please find her." Back at the honeymoon suite of Lake Haven Retreat, Ethan shut the door behind him and leaned against it, the silence pressing down like a weight. The once romantic room felt cold and foreign now. Their half-packed suitcases sat untouched, her perfume lingered faintly in the air, and the framed wedding photo on the nightstand stared back at him, a frozen moment from a life that already felt like it belonged to someone else. The honeymoon suite, once a sanctuary of laughter and love, now felt like a tomb to the happiness that had been cruelly stolen. Sunlight still poured through the wide windows, illuminating the sweeping views of the snow-capped mountains and the shimmering waters of Lake Wakatipu. Yet none of it brought warmth. Celeste's open suitcase lay on the luggage rack, her clothes neatly folded inside, a silent testimony to her sudden absence. Her nightgown hung over the armchair, exactly where she had left it the morning she disappeared, and her slippers sat perfectly beside the bed as if waiting for her to return. Ethan collapsed onto the king-sized bed, the weight of exhaustion pressing down harder than grief alone. Sleep seemed necessary, a fragile shield against the coming day of questioning and endless searching, yet his mind refused rest. He changed into pajama bottoms and a t-shirt, but as he lay back, The emptiness beside him felt unbearable. Only 2 weeks married, and already the world had been torn from him. He tried to quiet the racing thoughts, replaying the past weeks, searching desperately for a clue he might have overlooked. Something about the disappearance didn't sit right. The mysterious staff member who didn't exist on any roster. Celeste's cryptic remark about being free of everything soon. None of it matched the woman he had married. His gaze fell on her phone, left on the nightstand after the police had returned it following a forensic check. He had insisted he keep it, hoping for a call or message, any sign that she was safe. They'd agreed, for now, but only for the first 72 hours. Ethan picked up the device. The screen lit with missed calls from friends, texts asking about their honeymoon, social media notifications, but nothing about her disappearance. He hadn't told anyone yet, neither his parents nor hers. Part of him clung stubbornly to hope, imagining Celeste walking through the door any moment, her smile apologetic, the nightmare dissolving into a simple misunderstanding. His phone buzzed again. A new email. It was from Claire Madison, their wedding planner. The edited photos from your special day are ready. Find them in the attached Google Drive folder. It was an absolute honor to be part of such a beautiful celebration of love. Ethan hesitated before opening the link. The photos were meant to arrive 7 to 10 days after the wedding. Yet here they were. Part of him dreaded seeing them, fearing the vivid reminder of what he had lost. Another part ached to see her face, to remember the joy they had shared. The folder opened, revealing 50 professionally edited images. Ethan swiped through them slowly, each picture a haunting echo of happiness. The ceremony at the countryside estate in the Cotswolds, golden sunlight filtering through ancient oak trees. Friends and family from the United States mingling with his British relatives. And then, there she was, Celeste, radiant in her gown, her eyes sparkling with tears of joy. He lingered on each image, the vows, their first kiss, the cutting of the cake, their first dance, until he reached his favorite, a shot of them walking down the aisle as husband and wife, hand in hand, a perfect moment frozen in time. Ethan whispered to the empty room, "Where are you, honey?" His fingers trembled as he swiped, each photo both a comfort and a dagger, a reminder that the life he thought was just beginning had been ripped from him, leaving only questions, silence, and the haunting beauty of memories that refused to fade. The photograph that had once seemed a simple, joyous memory now felt like a trap. Ethan stared at the image, the newlyweds radiant, hands clasped tightly as guests clapped and cheered around them. Bright bunting fluttered overhead against a brilliant blue sky, and the lush, rolling greenery of the Cotswolds estate framed the scene perfectly. He zoomed in on their faces, remembering every smile, every laugh. But then his eyes wandered to the background, scanning absent-mindedly, until something froze him in place. A man stood at the rear of the gathering, rigid, arms at his sides, face cold and unyielding, staring directly at Celeste. Ethan's blood ran ice cold. "Alexander Vale," he whispered, voice hollow in the silence of the suite. It was unmistakable. Celeste's ex-husband, the man who had no right to be at their wedding, the man who had spent months harassing her until they had struck a fragile, uneasy agreement. They had thought he would stay away, and yet here he was, lurking in the shadows, watching. 2 weeks later, and now Celeste was gone. It was impossible to believe it was a coincidence. Ethan bolted upright, the exhaustion that had weighed him down vanishing in an instant, replaced by pure adrenaline. He downloaded the photo to his phone, fingers shaking, and scrolled frantically for Detective Wilson's number. But before he could dial, an unknown number rang. Hesitating only for a heartbeat, he answered. "Hello, Ethan." The voice on the other end was hers, or at least it sounded like hers. "Celeste?" His chest tightened. "Where are you? Are you okay? I've been out of my mind." The voice was flat, distant, lacking the warmth and life he had married. "I'm fine, Ethan," she said, almost mechanically. I'm sorry for doing it this way. Doing what? Celeste, what's happening? Are you in danger? Just tell me where you are and I'll come get you. He swallowed hard, the room closing in around him. There was a pause. Then she spoke again, calm but chilling. On our honeymoon, I've had time to think about us, and I don't think this is going to work out. Ethan felt his stomach drop. What are you talking about? We just got married. 2 weeks. This isn't like you. This isn't Celeste. I know, she continued, her voice steady but cold. We have different lives, different interests. Getting married, it was a mistake. I need time alone to figure things out. That's why I left. But now, everyone is searching for me, and I don't want that. I'm not in danger, Ethan. I just need space. He sank back onto the bed, heart hammering. Is this about your job? About moving to England with me? We can work that out. We can find a solution. Yes, that's part of it, she admitted. But there's more. I don't feel like we're right for each other in the long run. We promised to be with each other until death, and I just don't think that's possible. Ethan's hands shook around the phone. Celeste, this isn't you. This doesn't make sense. Is someone forcing you to say this? He caught himself mid-question, realizing the absurdity of asking her to blink over the line. Just tell me where you are. I have to go now, she said suddenly, voice hurried, almost detached. I'm sorry, Ethan. Please, move on from me. The line went dead. Ethan hurled his phone across the bed, a guttural scream of frustration ripping from his throat. He paced the suite, trying to make sense of the call, of her words, of her voice. Something was wrong. That hadn't been Celeste, not the Celeste he knew. Her tone, her cadence, her spirit, they were all off. The woman who had promised him forever wouldn't walk away after 2 weeks without even facing him. Something or someone was hiding the truth, and Ethan knew, deep in his gut, that the nightmare was far from over. Ethan's mind spun as he retraced everything he knew about Celeste. 3 years together, navigating life's storms side by side, including the relentless harassment from Alexander Vale, and now all of it seemed to unravel in an instant. But then a single detail stopped him cold. Celeste's phone was still on the nightstand. If she had truly left of her own accord, abandoning their marriage and all the reasons she'd given, why leave her phone behind? That made no sense. She had always spoken warmly of her family, despite their financial struggles. She would never cut them off without a word. And what about the mysterious man in the hotel staff uniform? If she had planned to disappear voluntarily, why the elaborate charade? Then there was Alexander Vale, lurking uninvited at their wedding, eyes fixed on her like a predator. Nothing added up. Heart racing, Ethan grabbed his phone, pulled on jeans and a sweater, and headed toward the elevator, intent on returning to the police station with the wedding photo and the details of the strange call. As he waited, his phone rang again. This time, it was Detective Wilson. Mr. Mercer, I need to inform you that your wife has just contacted us. Ethan's chest tightened. I know, he blurted. She called me too, but Detective, something's wrong. That wasn't really her. Her voice, yes, but not her words. And I found something else. Alexander Vale, her ex-husband, was at our wedding uninvited. I have a photo. Detective Wilson's voice remained calm, professional, yet gentle. We traced the call immediately and sent an officer to check on your wife. She is staying at a service apartment by herself. The officer spoke with her personally. She confirmed she left of her own volition and is not in any danger. Ethan felt the floor drop beneath him. What? No, that can't be right. Where is she? I need to see her. I'm afraid I cannot disclose that information, the detective replied. Your wife has requested privacy, and since no crime is involved, we must respect her wishes. Ethan's voice rose, disbelief and frustration raw. You can't just close the investigation like that. A curious elderly couple waiting nearby glanced at him as he shook with anger. Mr. Mercer, "There is nothing more we can do if your wife has chosen to leave," Wilson said softly. "This is now a personal matter between you and her. If I may offer some advice, newlyweds often get caught up in the excitement of the wedding without fully considering how their lives will change afterward. Perhaps give her time to process things." Ethan's mind reeled. Time. My wife wouldn't just leave like this. Something else is going on. I can't accept that," he whispered. But the detective's voice cut him off gently. "I understand this is difficult, but the case is closed. Good night, Mr. Mercer." The line went dead. He returned to the suite, slamming the door behind him hard enough to rattle the framed artwork on the walls. The room felt suffocating, the memories of their wedding day haunting every corner. The police had closed the case, claiming Celeste had left voluntarily, that their marriage was a mistake. But every fiber of Ethan's being rejected that explanation. It didn't match the woman he had married, the woman who had stood before family and friends 2 weeks ago and promised to share her life with him. He paced the room, running his hands through his hair, chest tight, mind frantically trying to piece together a truth that felt just out of reach. Desperate for a clue that might explain the impossible, Ethan knew that if the police wouldn't help, he would have to take matters into his own hands. His thoughts kept circling back to Alexander Vale. The man's presence at their wedding couldn't be coincidence, not when Celeste had vanished just 2 weeks later. Memories flooded him. The first months of their relationship, Alexander's relentless harassment, the threatening phone calls, showing up at her workplace, even following her home one night. He had been obsessed, incapable of letting go until they found leverage. Through her work at Vale's investment firm, Celeste had uncovered evidence of corruption and money laundering. They struck a deal. Alexander would leave them alone, and they would stay silent. For 3 years, it seemed to have worked. Ethan sat at the desk in their suite and pulled out his tablet. If Alexander was behind Celeste's disappearance, there had to be a trail, a clue, some way to locate him. And her. He began scouring the internet, searching for any recent news or signs of the man's activity. What he discovered only confirmed his fears. Despite their silence, someone else had blown the whistle last year, a former business partner who turned state's evidence in exchange for immunity. Alexander had faced severe consequences, losing multiple properties, a large portion of his company, and his reputation. But, remarkably, he had avoided jail time, shielded by expensive lawyers and carefully hidden evidence. Ethan dug deeper. If Alexander still owned property in New Zealand, that could be where Celeste was being kept. Hours of meticulous research finally paid off. A property listing in Queenstown, purchased through a shell company, could be traced back to one of Alexander's remaining holdings. The address was secluded, about 20 minutes from Lake Haven Retreat. Ethan's pulse raced. This had to be it. He grabbed his jacket and checked the time, just past midnight. Should he call the police again? Likely not. They had closed the case and would probably ignore him, and Alexander was still influential. Any warning might alert him. No. This had to be done alone. He would go there, see if Celeste was there, and decide his next move based on what he found. Before leaving, Ethan took one last look at Celeste's phone. Her lock screen displayed a photo of them on a hiking trip in the Lake District, her radiant smile capturing the real Celeste, the one he loved, not the distant hollow voice he had heard earlier. "I'm coming to find you," he whispered to the image. He pocketed his phone, checked that he had his wallet and room key, and headed for the door. His gaze fell on their wedding rings gleaming on the nightstand. Celeste had left hers there that morning, intending to put it back on after yoga. Ethan carefully slipped her ring into his pocket alongside his knife. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the hallway, heart pounding, ready to find his wife. Whether the police believed she needed rescuing or not, he didn't care. The night air outside was crisp and biting as he exited Lake Haven Retreat, the dark streets of Queenstown stretching before him. Every shadow and quiet corner seemed alive with possibility, and Ethan's determination burned hotter than the fear in his chest. He would bring her home, or die trying. Ethan spotted a taxi idling just outside the hotel entrance, the driver scrolling lazily through his phone as he waited for late-night customers. Even at this hour, Ethan approached, slid into the back seat, and showed the driver the address he had found. "Can you take me here, please?" The driver glanced at the screen. "Fernhill area." "Sure thing, mate. Bit quiet out there this time of night, though." "That's fine," Ethan said, settling into the seat, opening his GPS app and tracking their slow movement through the darkened streets of Queenstown. The town was subdued, though small groups of late-night revelers still wandered between bars along the waterfront, laughing and shouting, oblivious to the storm raging in Ethan's mind. As they left the town center behind, the streets grew narrower, darker, and more isolated. Houses spaced farther apart, the glow of streetlights faint and uneven. Anxiety gnawed at Ethan with each passing minute. What would he find at Alexander Vale's property? Would Celeste be there? And if she was, what could he actually do? One man against Vale and whatever network of people he might have, he felt a chill at the thought. After roughly 20 minutes, the driver slowed. "We're almost there. Want me to drop you a bit before the actual address? It's pretty dark out here." "Yes, please," Ethan said, grateful for discretion. "A few houses down will be perfect." The taxi pulled over where the road curved, about 100 yards from Vale's property. Ethan stepped out into the cool night, the taxi's taillights shrinking down the road until he was alone in the stillness. He paused, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness before cautiously moving toward the property. In the distance, he could make out a large, modern house, set well back from the road behind a security gate. The house was dark, no lights glowing from any window, no hint of activity around the perimeter. It looked abandoned, or at least uninhabited. Ethan frowned, disappointment weighing on him. Had this lead been a dead end? He crouched in the shadow of a tall pine tree, studying the property for several tense minutes, but saw nothing. Then he remembered Detective Wilson's words. Celeste was staying at a service apartment. Scanning the area, he noticed a low-rise building a block away, its entrance softly illuminated by ground lighting. Lakeview Service Apartments. Could this be where she was? As he approached, his hopes surged. The building looked exactly like a service apartment complex. This had to be it. Celeste must be inside. But the obstacles were immediate. The main entrance required a key card, and even if he got inside, he had no idea which unit she was in. A concierge desk was visible through the glass, but it was unmanned at this hour. Ethan paused, weighing his options. Wait outside until morning, hoping she might step out, or circle back to Vale's property, searching for some clue that might confirm whether anyone was actually there. The night was quiet, heavy with tension, and every decision carried the weight of what he could and could not control. Deciding to pursue the latter course of action, Ethan returned to the dark, imposing house. He approached the gate cautiously and pressed the intercom button. A long silence followed before he pressed it again. Just as he was about to give up, the speaker crackled to life. "Who is it?" a woman's voice demanded, elderly and sharp with irritation. "I'm looking for Alexander Vale," Ethan said, keeping his tone measured. "Is he available?" "Who's asking?" she snapped. "I'm an associate from London. I need to speak with him urgently." A pause. "The boss hasn't been here for a very long time. Go away. It's the middle of the night." "It's very important," Ethan insisted. "When do you expect him back?" "I said go away," the woman barked. But after a brief pause, she added grudgingly, "If you're that desperate to find him, try the Trout and Tackle down the road. He used to conduct business there before all his trouble started." The intercom clicked off, leaving Ethan standing alone in the shadows, a mix of frustration and cautious hope settling in. If Vale had frequented that local bar, someone there might know his current whereabouts. Ethan returned to the road, mind racing. If Vale wasn't at his Queenstown property, where was he? And if Celeste was supposedly staying at the service apartments by choice, why so close to her ex-husband's property? He glanced back at the apartment building, realizing there was little more he could do tonight without drawing attention. but he couldn't simply return to the hotel either. Across the street, a neon sign flickered in the darkness. The Trout and Tackle. A small bar, still open, and likely the place the housekeeper had mentioned. Ethan crossed the street and pushed through the door. Inside, the bar smelled faintly of stale beer and cigarette smoke, its dark wood paneling lined with fishing memorabilia that had soaked in decades of local history. A few patrons were scattered around, 2 older men at the bar, a small group chatting in a corner, and a solitary woman sipping wine while absorbed in a book. Ethan approached the bar and ordered a beer from the stocky, salt-and-pepper-bearded bartender. "You're not from around here," the man observed, setting the beer in front of him. "No," Ethan replied. "I'm visiting from England." He paused, then decided to be direct. "Actually, I'm looking for information about Alexander Vale. I understand he used to come here." The bartender's expression tightened, eyes narrowing slightly. "Vale? Yeah, he used to be a regular before all that business trouble. Don't see him much these days." He studied Ethan's face. "You a business associate?" "Something like that," Ethan said vaguely. "Do you know if he's currently in Queenstown?" The bartender shrugged. "Couldn't say for sure, but if you really want to find Vale or track his movements, you should talk to Darren Hutchkins. He runs the charter business Vale uses whenever he's in town. Vale doesn't own boats himself, too traceable, but he's been chartering from Darren for years." Ethan nodded, absorbing the lead. It wasn't much, but it was something. A thread to follow in the dark. If Vale was using the marina, Darren might know more about his comings and goings, and more importantly, it could bring Ethan closer to finding Celeste. Ethan's heart raced. This was exactly the kind of lead he needed. "Is Darren a regular here?" he asked, careful not to sound too eager. The bartender nodded. "Oh yeah, he comes in every night, like clockwork. Been doing it for 15 years. Should be here any minute now." Ethan slid into a small table by the window, giving him a clear view of the service apartments and the road leading to Vale's property. From here, he could watch for Darren's arrival while keeping an eye on any movement at the apartment building. The bartender placed his beer on the table. Ethan took a cautious sip, the cool liquid doing little to calm his racing thoughts. He felt simultaneously close to finding Celeste and painfully aware of how far away she might still be. Checking his watch, he realized it was nearly 1 a.m., and he wondered how long he should wait, or if he even had a plan. The door swung open, and a boisterous man in his 40s entered with 3 friends in tow. He was tall, weathered, with the self-assured presence of someone used to commanding attention. "First round's on me, lads," he announced, clapping one friend on the back as they made their way to a nearby table. "Order whatever you want. Food, drinks, the works. Tonight, we celebrate." Ethan focused on the window, pretending not to listen, but the man's voice carried easily across the half-empty bar. "I just made a bloody fortune tonight," the man declared, pulling out his phone. "Look at this. A guy just rented my yacht half an hour ago. Paid double the going rate without haggling." His friends leaned over to examine the screen. "You sure it's not a scam, Darren?" one asked. "Looks like it came from an offshore account." "Nah, it's legit," Darren insisted. "Already checked my bank account. 200 grand, right there, black and white. And he paid the security deposit in crypto." Ethan's ears perked up at the mention of the initials AV. "AV?" one friend mused. "Could that be Alexander Vale? That rich bloke living up the hill?" Ethan subtly shifted to get a better angle on the conversation. "Could be," Darren replied thoughtfully. "Had a chat with him in this very bar a few years back. Exchanged numbers. Said he might want to charter the yacht sometime. Didn't care much who it was. Money's good, that's all." Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. If Vale had just chartered a yacht, it could be his way of disappearing with Celeste. Off the mainland. Out of cell reception. Nearly impossible to track. He pushed back his barely touched beer and walked over to the group, trying to keep his tone calm. "Excuse me," he said. "I couldn't help overhearing. You must be Darren Hutchkins. The bartender said you might be able to help me. I'm looking for Alexander Vale. It's urgent." The men looked up, a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "And who might you be?" Darren asked, scrutinizing him. Ethan hesitated, then gave a version of the truth. My name's Ethan Vale. He's taken my wife. The group exchanged glances, one snickering. Mate, sounds like you've got woman troubles. If she left you for a rich bloke, can't say I blame her. Ethan's face flushed with anger, but he forced himself to stay composed. It's not like that, he said, voice low but steady. He's her ex-husband, Darren. Studied Ethan for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Yeah, you look like a man whose missus has gone missing, he said, voice rough but not unkind. All right, sit down. Let me hear your story. Ethan took a seat, condensing the events into a coherent timeline. How he met Celeste, her history with Alexander Vale, their wedding, and the shocking disappearance during their honeymoon. He left out the specifics of Vale's criminal dealings, but emphasized the man's obsessive, dangerous behavior. I believe he's planning to take her away on the yacht you've chartered to him, Ethan concluded, voice tight. I need to know where they're going. Darren leaned back, skeptical. Look, mate, I get it, I really do. But I've got a business to run. I can't just hand out client information based on some story. Ethan's desperation pushed him forward. Please, he pleaded. Just tell me if they've left yet. Where's the yacht docked? Darren sighed, then seemed to soften, perhaps swayed by Ethan's intensity or his own curiosity. All right, tell you what, I'm in a good mood tonight with this payday. Let me check with my staff at the dock. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Jimmy? Yeah, it's me. That charter for tonight. Have they set sail yet? He listened, then nodded. Still waiting for them to arrive, right? Thanks. Hanging up, he looked at Ethan. They haven't left yet. Yacht's still at my private anchorage in Fjordland. Staff says they're expecting the party within the hour. Ethan's pulse spiked. Fjordland. How far? About 3 hours from here. 2 if you really push it. Late night, no traffic. Ethan leapt to his feet. I need to get there now. Can you take me? I'll pay double, triple what Vale's paying. Darren laughed, a low, knowing chuckle. Don't look like you've got that kind of cash, son. But I'm curious to see how this plays out. If this Vale character really has your wife, I don't want that on my conscience. He stood, brushing back his jacket. I'll drive you myself, but you promise me one thing. Anything, Ethan said, eagerness and hope flooding his tone. Don't piss off the rich bloke too much. I don't want him asking for his money back. Darren winked at his friends, who raised their glasses in a toast to his unexpected night of adventure. Ethan felt a surge of hope for the first time since Celeste vanished. He was on Vale's trail, and with any luck, he'd reach the yacht before it sailed, before Vale could take Celeste out of reach forever. Let's go, Darren said, downing the last of his drink. Range Rover's outside. We'll make it in 2 hours flat. True to his word, the drive was swift and tense. Winding mountain roads blurred beneath them, silence punctuated only by Darren's occasional commentary on the rugged landscape or probing questions about Ethan's situation as they approached the secluded private anchorage nestled in Fjordland National Park. Surrounded by towering peaks and dense forest, Ethan's anxiety surged to a fever pitch. The remote location confirmed everything he feared. This was Vale's plan, and the clock was ticking. Every second mattered. The yacht, moored just beyond the inlet, gleamed under the moonlight, silent and waiting. Ethan gritted his teeth, ready to confront whatever lay ahead to get Celeste back. Ethan Cole's breath hitched as Darren eased the Range Rover around the final bend, and the high beams cut through the night to reveal a sleek 76-foot cruiser moored at a private dock, Southern Cross, its name glinting in the light, exactly where he'd feared. Tucked into a secluded inlet in the San Juan Islands off the Washington coast. A place Vale must have chosen for its isolation and the way the waters swallowed signals and prying eyes. The yacht's deck was lit, casting a warm halo on the black water, and Ethan watched through the binoculars Darren tossed him until his throat went dry. Claire walking down the wooden planks toward the vessel, flanked by 2 dark-suited men who moved like professional security. And standing on the swim platform as she was guided aboard was Alexander Vance. The same man who'd haunted their life for years, reaching for her with a familiarity that made Claire recoil before he placed a hand on her back to usher her up the companionway. She wasn't bound, but everything about her posture screamed tension, not consent. Ethan's voice was a raw whisper. "That's them. My wife and Vance." Darren squinted and, grudging, agreed. She didn't look like she was there by choice. So Ethan fumbled for his phone and, heart-pounding, rang Detective Wilson. To his surprise, the detective answered despite the hour, and when Ethan shoved the location at him, describing the private anchorage and the yacht, the detective turned sharp, warned him to stay put, promised to deploy police and maritime units, and told him again and again not to confront Vance or his men because it was an extremely dangerous situation. Ethan could hear the logic in the warning, but looking back at Claire as the crew began to cast off and the lines were heaved, he felt panic claw him forward. Darren muttered that once they slipped out into the channels and the bodies of water beyond, like the open reaches toward the Strait of Juan de Fuca, there'd be no reliable signal and little chance of tracking them, that those island passages could hide a yacht for days or weeks. And when Ethan saw the security team start to free the mooring lines, he decided he could not simply hide and wait for backup that might arrive too late, because every second could carry Claire farther away. Vale's smirk faltered as the whop-whop of helicopter rotors cut through the night air, a distant but unmistakable warning that backup was arriving. Ethan's pulse spiked, adrenaline sharpening every sense. Vale's men froze, the tension palpable as their eyes darted toward the sound above. One of them barked a command, but it was too late. Hesitation had taken hold. Celeste, seizing the moment, wrenched her arm free from the man restraining her and stumbled toward Ethan, relief and determination written across her face. Ethan grabbed her hand, pulling her close as the mock gun still aimed in front of them created a thin line of threat against the remaining guards. "Stay behind me," he whispered, heart hammering. Vale's fury ignited, but the distraction was enough. Two of his men turned instinctively toward the sound of the approaching authorities, shouting at each other in confusion. Vale stepped forward, eyes blazing, but before he could act, the helicopter's searchlight swept over the dock, illuminating the scene in stark white. Panic rippled through his team. Ethan used the chaos to guide Celeste toward the edge of the dock, every step measured, silent, urgent. "This way," he urged, moving them toward a small, unguarded tender moored at the side. Vale lunged, but a beam of light caught him, making him freeze as law enforcement agents repelled from the helicopter and stormed the area. The sudden show of force disoriented Vale and his security team. Guns were drawn, shouted commands filled the night, and Ethan held Celeste tightly, whispering reassurances as she clung to him. The moment stretched, taut with danger, until the first officers reached the dock, shouts and authoritative commands cutting through the night air. Vale's men hesitated, then, seeing the overwhelming presence of police and the flashing lights on the water, slowly began to back away. Ethan didn't let go of Celeste, keeping her between himself and Vale until the authorities took control. Finally, with sirens blaring and officers securing the yacht and dock, Vale was confronted, and Ethan watched as the man's arrogance faltered into helplessness. Celeste turned to Ethan, her voice trembling but steady. I thought I'd never see you again." Ethan held her close, the weight of the past weeks finally breaking as relief flooded through him. "I've got you," he whispered fiercely, "and I'm not letting go." Around them, the chaos of the rescue continued, but for Ethan and Celeste, in that illuminated slice of night on the dock, the nightmare had finally begun to lift. Two of Vale's men broke away, diving into the black water below the dock to escape. The rest froze, glancing toward Vale for direction. Celeste seized the moment, twisting violently out of her captor's grasp and sprinting toward Ethan. He caught her with one arm, the other still raised, mock gun steady on Vale. "It's really over now," Ethan said, voice steady but breath ragged. Above them, the helicopter's searchlight carved through the night, a white-hot beam slicing across the dock. The roar of the rotors was deafening, shaking the air, scattering loose debris into the water. For the first time, Ethan saw it. The flicker of panic on Vale's face as his empire unraveled around him. From the south end of the inlet, 2 police boats raced in, blue lights streaking across the dark surface. On shore, police vehicles pulled up in formation, headlights piercing the gloom. Vale's security detail faltered. Weapons dropped. The fight was gone. "Down on the ground, now!" The command came from the boats, officers with rifles shouting over the chaos. Vale's men obeyed instantly, sprawling face down on the planks. Only Vale remained standing, fists clenched, fury burning in his eyes. "This isn't over," he muttered, low but sharp enough to cut through the noise. 2 officers approached from behind. "Alexander Vale, you're under arrest," one said, snapping handcuffs around his wrists. "You have the right to remain silent." Ethan finally lowered the gun. His arm trembled. Celeste turned into him, burying her face in his chest. Her body shook with silent sobs. "It's okay," he whispered into her hair. "It's over. You're safe now." A woman in uniform stepped up beside them. "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, I'm Sergeant Kapor. We need to get you both to safety and take your statements." Ethan nodded, still holding Celeste close as they walked toward the police vehicles. Discreetly, he handed the weapon to the sergeant. "It's not real," he murmured. Kapor raised an eyebrow but said nothing, just gave a small nod of understanding. Inside the warmth of the police car, Celeste finally looked up. Her eyes were swollen, her voice fragile but clear. "How did you find me? How did you know?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "I saw him in our wedding photos," he said. "He was there, watching us. Then I remembered the threats, the way he talked about you. When you disappeared, I knew it had to be him." Celeste squeezed his hand. "He had someone watching us from the start. When that man approached me at the resort, I thought he was staff. But then he showed me a photo of my parents, said they'd be harmed if I didn't go with him quietly." Ethan's jaw tightened. "He'll never touch you again." Outside, the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon. Cold gray light spilling across the waves as the police boats pulled away with Vale in custody. Ethan's blood ran cold. "Did he hurt you?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Celeste shook her head. "No. He wanted me to choose him willingly. Kept saying we were meant to be together, that you and I would never work out." Her voice hardened. "He made me call you, stood right there with his men, telling me what to say. I tried to sound unconvincing, hoping you'd realize something was wrong." "I did," Ethan said, relief and anger tangled together. "Nothing about that call sounded like you. And you left your phone behind." "Knew you'd never do that voluntarily." The drive to the nearest police station was a blur of dark forests and winding roads. By the time they arrived, the adrenaline from the rescue had worn off, leaving both Ethan and Celeste exhausted, but safe, and together. At the station, they were separated for individual interviews. Ethan was led into a small, dimly lit room where a different detective awaited. "I'm Detective Sergeant Morris," the officer introduced himself. "I understand you've had quite a night, Mr. Mercer." Ethan nodded, fatigue heavy on his shoulders. "You could say that," he replied. He recounted everything, from Celeste's disappearance, the chilling discovery in their wedding photos, his research into Vale's properties, and the tense confrontation at the dock. Detective Morris recorded every word, asking for clarification only occasionally, letting Ethan's story unfold uninterrupted. "We'll need to coordinate with Queenstown Police," Morris said when Ethan finished. "Detective Wilson has already been briefed on the situation," Ethan replied. "Will Vale be able to get away with this?" Ethan asked, anxiety thick in his voice. "Not this time," Morris assured him. "Kidnapping is a serious offense. With the evidence we have, including Mrs. Mercer's testimony and the fake staff member who initially approached her, we have a strong case. Vale is a U.S. citizen with extensive business interests here in New Zealand, including possible money laundering operations. Multiple agencies will be involved in his prosecution." The door opened, and another officer entered, carrying a small evidence bag. "Sir, we found this during the security check of Mrs. Mercer," the officer reported, handing it to Detective Morris. Inside was a delicate beaded bracelet. Ethan recognized it immediately. Celeste had cherished it as a gift she believed came from her mother. "Our team found a tracking device embedded in one of the beads," the officer explained. "Very sophisticated, virtually undetectable without specialized equipment." Ethan stared at the bracelet in shock. "She's been wearing this since about 4 months before our wedding," Morris said grimly. "It appears Vale has been monitoring your wife's movements for months, planning this operation carefully." A cold realization washed over Ethan. Vale had tracked them relentlessly, waiting for the perfect opportunity. Even the honeymoon, the generous gift from Celeste's old boss, now felt tainted. Could Vale have orchestrated that too? In a foreign country, with deep connections, they had been cut off from their support network, isolated and vulnerable. After completing his statement, Ethan was led to a waiting area. Celeste sat wrapped in a blanket, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. The moment she saw him, she rose and rushed into his arms. Over her shoulder, Ethan watched as Vale was escorted through the station toward the detention cells, finally restrained and powerless. Despite his handcuffs and the officers flanking him, Vale maintained his arrogant demeanor, a smug grin spreading across his face when he spotted Ethan and Celeste. "This isn't done," he called out. "You can't run from me." Ethan met his gaze steadily. "Yes, we can, especially when you have no money left to chase us with." Vale's grin faltered slightly before the officers ushered him away. Turning back to Celeste, Ethan guided her to the seats. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Really? Okay," she replied, exhaustion evident in her eyes. "I am now." She hesitated, then asked softly, "Did they tell you about the bracelet?" "Yes," Ethan said gently. "He's been tracking you for months." Celeste shuddered. "I never suspected it wasn't from my mother. It arrived with a card signed from her. I feel violated knowing he's been watching me all this time." Ethan held her close. "It's over now. He'll be locked away for a long time." "I'd like to hope so," Celeste murmured, burying her face in his neck. A female officer approached with 2 cups of coffee. "You two have had quite an ordeal. The detectives say you're free to go once transport back to Queenstown can be arranged. Should be in about an hour." As the officer walked away, Celeste looked at Ethan with a tentative smile. "Are we still on our honeymoon?" 3 days left, Ethan said, exhaling with a laugh. "And we haven't even tried flight boarding or cliff jumping yet." "I think I might pass on those," he admitted, tension from the past days finally dissolving. "Losing you gave me enough of a heart attack, and I imagine the police proceedings will keep us busy." Celeste rested her head on his shoulder, her hand finding his. "Surely we can find time for something fun," she said. "We're at the other end of the world, probably as close to the South Pole as we'll ever be. We shouldn't waste it." Ethan's expression grew serious. "Before we make plans, I need to be sure. All those things you said on the phone, about regretting our marriage, about us having different interests, none of that was real, right?" Celeste lifted her head to meet his eyes. "Not a single word," she promised. "I've never been more certain of anything than I am of us. Vale made me say those things, trying to make you give up searching. But I knew you wouldn't. I knew you'd find me." Overwhelmed with relief, Ethan pulled her close again. In just a few days, they had weathered a storm that would have broken many couples, and emerged stronger. As dawn began to break over the mountains of Fjordland, casting golden light through the station windows, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out her wedding ring, the one she had left on the nightstand that fateful morning. "I think this belongs to you," he said softly, holding the gold band between his fingers. Celeste's eyes widened, filled with emotion. "You brought it with you?" "I couldn't leave it behind," Ethan said, "just like I couldn't leave you behind." Gently, he slid the ring back onto her finger. The simple gold band caught the morning light, gleaming as if brand new. Celeste stared for a moment, then intertwined her fingers with his. "Perfect fit," she whispered. "Just like us." Ethan murmured back. I love you. I love you too, she said, squeezing his hand. Always. Outside, the sun continued its ascent, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day, a fresh start, and the promise of countless more days together stretched before them, as vast and beautiful as the New Zealand landscape itself. In the end, love and determination triumphed. After facing a dangerous adversary and uncovering months of deception, Ethan and Celeste were finally reunited, their bond stronger than ever. It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope and courage can bring people back together. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, hit the like button, share it with someone who loves a real-life thriller, and subscribe so you never miss another shocking tale like this.